as far as the digital natives are concerned, a lot of sensitive information is residing in the cloud because these are digital natives. So, Rohit, what do you see as the biggest challenges to ensuring the security, integrity of your data in a multi-cloud environment? Maybe if you can just.
So we are a cloud native firm, and thankfully we are single cloud, so we don't have a multi-cloud kind of an environment at this point in time. I think while there are a lot of solutions which have come for cloud, and there are many tools. Some of them are provided by CSPs and some external players, and that to an extent is still solved. You have the VPN, the private networks. You have different layers where you're protecting the data, and finally on the data you're putting the layering. One of the areas which I feel, especially for the new age companies, is creating that fine balance between growth and security with the external vendors.
If you can add from your side, what do you see as the biggest challenges in terms of data security and integrity in your cloud environment?
To really effectively use data, right? We want anybody in the company, any program, any individual, right, to capitalize on the power of data, right? Which means we want to allow data to move from one system to another, to be accessed by programs, to be accessed by individuals. And I think this is where the challenge comes. The real value means ki a lot of data will continue to flow from all the devices, on the users. A huge amount of data is flowing in and flowing out, both like externally, right, and inside your systems, right?
But do you see any new challenges coming up, especially in the light of some of the new age threats that are on the horizon now?
We want to democratize data, but how do you democratize the data without actually giving out sensitive information out, right? So let's say, for example, a product analyst wants to do deep dive into the transaction patterns of the last 3-4 years, right? So how I mean, we want to democratize the data. You should be able to query that, but how do you ensure that essentially the email IDs and the mobile numbers are not openly available? The second challenge is with respect to how do you actually keep on verifying and validating that, because as we are all companies which keep pushing out features and product updates frequently, the challenge is to how do we actually ensure that the sanctity of our ecosystems is very, very secure.
Aseem, uh, now securing the private data in the public cloud is essential not only for companies, not only to avoid any catastrophic security incidents, but also to ensure that they have a successful digital transformation strategy in place. Because without securing the data in the cloud, in the public cloud, they're not only vulnerable to attacks, but that can also actually bring down their whole digital transformation agenda. So, what do you suggest, are the ways in which organizations should address this challenge of securing data in the public cloud, and what role can data encryption play in offering a robust last line of defense to protect the data against breaches?
For any security, right, we have to think in defense in depth. So the defense in depth means that there is a different layers of controls which are put together. Some are preventative, some are detective controls. So at each layer, as the data moves or the system is accessed, at each layer the control is implemented. So if even if one control fails, the second one will take over and protect it. And encryption absolutely is the last line of defense, right? When everything has failed and your data has left your organization, data is with the hacker or the other threat actors. At that point in time, the only thing what you separating disaster and your business is the key which is not set with the data.
That encryption is just one thing. Encryption is like you are locking the door and keeping the key on the lock itself. In any of the cases, if some attacker wants to come, he can just easily get the key to that encrypted data and unlock it. The idea is to decouple the keys. Whether your data is on cloud or is on premise or it's a hybrid or a multi cloud, you need to decouple the keys. That is the most important thing. And most of the major, in fact, all of the major cloud service providers are today's date doing that. They are offering you encryption. They are offering you the key management as well. But the only catch over here is that the whatever key management that is being provided by them, it's being handled by them itself. So that is where we need to be wise enough to at least own that encryption key and keep it locally with us.
So, Yash, you've heard Aseem and Ishan talk about data encryption. So, in your opinion, how critical is data encryption as part of your overall data protection, data security, data privacy strategy?
Yeah, I think I would just agree with what Aseem says, right? I think, in fact, I'll just quote one example which happened. I don't want to name the company, but there was a breach in 2020, I think 2020, where in that company, one of the developers actually was taking a DB backup, and he actually put the data onto a public bucket, and then it was quickly gathered by the, and he had only put there for a temporary story, and it was pulled out. And the only thing that saved the company was that a major portion of the data was actually encrypted. So while the data had actually left the organization, but because large portion of that was encrypted, it was not as useful to the hacker. So I think there is a lot of value of encryption, and I think we should all aspire to have our data encrypted.
So, Rohit, what is your strategy around data encryption as a component of your data protection strategy?
It's a multi-layer strategy, and when everything fails, finally you need to have a strategy how you could protect the last mile or the last layer of it, which is your data. So data encryption has to be done.
So I think we start with the data collection time itself, right? So once data is being collected, instrumented in the system, we identify which data is sensitive, which is not, right? So PII, for example, we know it is a sensitive data. So I think first it starts with classification, right? Second thing what we do is we segregate this data, right? So there are, like, for example, transactional systems which are sources of truth, right? So there is protection to ensure that nobody has direct access to this data.
Is that even if organizations have data encryption in place, they still need a centralized enterprise key management system for your data encryption to work well, to work effectively.
Yes. Absolutely correct. Yes. If we have, let's say, multiple databases, most of the organization goes with multiple things. And I have one database, let's say Oracle, second is Postgres, and the third one is Microsoft SQL. Along with that, I have some virtual machines also. And I am doing all of the native encryption with them. Then the most difficult part for me is to manage the encryption keys of individually of them. So what is the solution for me to make my life easier and secure is to get just a single encryption key for all of them, so that from a single pane of glass or from just one console I can manage all of that. And that is where the role of enterprise key management comes into the picture, which will not only help you to manage the encryption key separately from the encrypted data, but also centralize encryption keys that it will help.
What are some of the use cases, especially in the new age commerce companies, digital native, cloud native companies? What are some of the specific use cases of a centralized key management system that can help in enhancing the security posture, the data security posture of the companies?
So data encryption and key management is just one thing, which any which ways is helping you to protect your data, manage the keys. That is one thing. It's if we see in a little bit wider way, it's a three-step process. We need to take a step back from encryption of data. Where comes like the discovery of data? We actually need to discover where exactly are all of our data stored. Like I know that, okay, these are the two servers where my most critical PII data is stored, but am I really sure that only these are the two servers? Apart from this, there can be multiple places, can be into endpoints, it can be other servers as well. So the first step is to discover your data, and then along with the discovery, you need to classify your data into critical, less critical, your financial data, PII data. And then comes the second step of protecting that, which means that now you have a list. This is the critical data, this is less critical data. What I actually need to protect. That's where the encryption parts come along with the key management, where you encrypt that data and manage the keys away from that. That is the second step. And the third and the most important step is the access control. I have encrypted my data, my keys are managed. Now, who all needs to have access to those encryption keys? That is also important. And this is the thing which will save us from the internal threat, which I was earlier speaking about, internal threat. So that is where this three-step process that comes into the picture. And if you talk about the multi-cloud environment in the new age commerce, or maybe any of the organizations who are moving into cloud, one of the most common common thing that I usually hear from different organizations is that the manageability part of multiple keys, if they are into multi-cloud and if they want to move from one cloud to another cloud and from second to third, that is the most complex part. It's like nightmare for those organizations, and that's where if you have a single key for all of your encrypted data, that will help. So that is one of the most common use case what we see.